The second section of income tax, which is section 3 of the guided notes, deals with a little bit more in depth of what's going on with these income tax rates and things of that. And specifically, we're going to revisit that the idea of having the married couple and so on and so forth. So you're going to have to use the tax rate schedules that are in your guided notes to answer most of these questions. Okay? So assume we have a married couple who make a total of $200,000. And let's, for the sake of argument, assume each one makes $100,000. How much do they pay in total if they filed jointly as a married couple? Okay? Now, if they filed jointly as a married couple, again, look up your tax schedule brackets, then they put all of this $200,000 in one return. Again, if you go through your married filing jointly tax brackets, that means, well, let's take this 200,000, 200,000. We are in the above 148,850, but not over 226,850. So subtract off the 148,000, the lower number in that tax bracket. And you'll see that they make $51,150 over the 148. So again, what's going to happen is you're going to look at this tax brackets. It says tax 28. Your tax is going to be $28,925 plus 28% of what's in excess of that 148. All right, so 28,925, type that in, 28,925 plus 0.28 times 51,150. And that would mean your tax burden to, again, the federal income tax burden, I should say. I have $43,247. Okay? Again, double check me on that and all that kind of stuff. So, if they were a married couple, they would be taxed $43,247. Now, let's say that same married couple all of a sudden next year gets divorced, or maybe in this year. Maybe you could consider it as equal. There's two couples, however the situation you want to imagine. But let's say they get divorced and now they file single returns. Okay. I want you to push pause on this video and calculate how much they would pay together if they got divorced and did the single tax bracket. Take a few seconds to do this. All right, so hopefully you calculated that, and hopefully you get the same answer that I do. So they made 100,000. That means they are in the above 89,350 category. So take our 100,000. 100,000 minus 89,350. And that comes out, I don't know, I'm going to type that in. 10,650. And since we talked about being in that, we have 18,000. Now, what I'm really actually doing, maybe I should have said this right up front. I'm calculating the tax on one person would have to pay, right? Each makes 100,000, so one of them would have to pay the amount of, the amount of taxes on $100,000, okay? Which I'm about ready to calculate. So add 28% of 10,650 to 18,193. And I got that the single person would file $21,175.75. Okay. By the way, if we count their total tax burden as a couple now, as two people, now multiply that number by 2. Now together they would have paid $42,351.50. Okay? So just think about that and compare it to the last number we had and see what you come up with. So this table kind of lets you write that down. What you've seen here is that in this case, if they're married together, they would pay $43,247 if they married, filed jointly. If they got divorced, then their total tax burden would actually be $42,351.50. Now, you may ask this. You may ask, well, we filed married jointly. It turns out that if you look at the married jointly tax brackets and the married filing single tax brackets, all of the numbers are actually precisely doubled. So it actually, if each one of these people were to file married separately, their total tax burden would be $43,247 as well. So filing, anytime you're married, you're going to pay anytime this couple anyways is married, they're going to pay $43,247. Anytime they're divorced, they're going to pay $42,000. Now, in just strict financial terms, right, we can clearly see that they're better off being divorced and filed singly. Okay? And that can be a little bit troublesome because you wouldn't think a tax code should punish people for getting married. Okay. All right, so this is what I was saying before. If you did actually file married separately instead of married jointly, then if each person made $100,000, then it really wouldn't be any difference. Okay, there would be no difference in the taxed amount. So you can go through, and if you want to, in fact, I would suggest you do just for practice. Push pause on the video. Actually calculate what would happen if they if that couple filed married separately, and each one made $100,000 of taxable income. But I'm not going to write that down on the slide. Okay. So now we're going to change the situation. Okay. So the situation, instead of having each person make $100,000, let's have one person make significantly more than the other. So let's make one person makes $170,000 and the other makes $30,000. Now that's still $200,000. So we're in the same scenario if they file jointly as a married couple. Okay. Again, push pause on the video just for practice. Try to do this on your own, and then I'll come back and I'll just write things in. All right, so you should have, you should have, as you did in the very second slide, gotten the following number as the final tax burden on this couple: $43,247. Okay, same one we had in the second slide. So if they got divorced and each filed single returns, it's not going to be quite the same situation, because in this time, again, we have a $30,000 person and a $170,000 person. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to calculate each of those separately and then add them up. And so I want you to try that. Push pause on the slides. Calculate a $30,000 somebody who makes $30,000 and files singly. Someone who makes $170,000 and files singly. And add those up and see their total tax burden if the couple we talked about before got divorced and then filed single returns. Now I'm going to do actually my calculations on a different slide than this, because I don't have very much room. So we're going to take the $30,000 person first. So we're taking the $30,000. They are single tax bracket in the over 9,075. So take 9,075. I'm going to type that into my calculator. 30,000 minus 975. That is 20,925 over that 9,075. So what the tax brackets tell me to do is take $907.50, add that to 15% of 20,925. Okay, I didn't write this very nicely, but what I have is a tax burden on the person making $30,000 is $4,046.25. Now on the other person, this 170,000 person, they are in the tax bracket which is over 89,350. But under the 186. So take 170,000 minus 89,350. You have 8,065. So 80,650. And I have to take $18,193.75 and add on 28% of the $80,650. 18,193.75 plus 28% of 80,650. So there I got 4,077.75. So one person will pay $4,000 and the other person pays a little over $40,000. And so if we add that up, the total tax burden between these two people is $44,000. I hope everybody sees what I'm doing here. I'm adding this number and this number. And the total tax burden is $44,822. Okay? Now, if we remember what happened earlier, remember, married filing jointly was the same as I want to write this in the corner. I'll write this in red. It was our tax burden if we were married and filed jointly was 43 to 47. So in this scenario, you actually pay more if you were divorced. Okay? So, interestingly enough, we saw if both people made $100,000, it was better off to be divorced. Here we see if one person makes $30,000 and the other person makes $170,000, then you're actually better off to be married. Okay? So in this situation, you get a tax benefit if you are married. And it's really interesting. In certain situations, you get this penalty to be married. In other situations, you get a benefit. Okay? And it just depends on how much you make. In general, if you and your spouse make close to the same amount, then you're probably going to get a slight penalty. If you and your spouse make a different amount, like highly different, then you're likely to get a tax benefit for being married, or at least at the $200,000 mark. You can calculate what that means for higher numbers as well, and it's an interesting exercise to do this. So you may hear in the news somebody talking about a marriage penalty or a marriage benefit. Most likely you hear things associated with the marriage penalty rather than the benefit. But now you know what that means. If you get married in certain situations, you pay more in taxes. In other situations, if you get married, you'll pay less in taxes. Again, I'm talking about as a couple.